there's just an important fact just to add to that. Around 3/4, we believe, of the insurgents fight within a few miles of where they're born. So the insurgency is not an alien and manoeuvrable force that's in and around the population. Most of the insurgency grows within it, and therefore by bringing security to an area, people quietly reintegrate just into the mainstream, as we're seeing in Marja. And at the Shura we attended earlier in the week, I suspect 2/3 of the people there might well have labelled themselves as insurgents or even as Taliban only a few weeks before, but they've just quietly moved their community away from one affiliation to another, and that's the real objective. There are some real hardcore, some from outside the area, who might move around, but that's actually the minority, and those are the people that we want the communities to expel, and then the communities themselves to essentially manage the reintegration process, although there is obviously a programme to help that as well.
General, in Istanbul, you described the overall situation as serious but no longer deteriorating. Since then, there have been battlefield gains in Marja, there have been arrests along both sides of the Afghan-Pakistani border of Taliban figures. Overall, does that assessment still hold, or are you more optimistic likely than it may have been a few years back?
It still holds, because serious is, a pretty wide margin. But I'm happy with what has happened in the weeks since we were in Istanbul. I don't think it's been a decisive turning point, but it is certainly, there have been developments, a number of captures of Taliban leaders, and the success of Marja. And to really pick up on what Ambassador Sedwill said, the Afghan government really taking ownership of this particular effort, to my mind, has been a hugely positive development. So I still think it's about where I said, but I'm happy with the past few weeks.
Just to follow briefly for both on that last point, the reporting about the Haji here, does that change in any way your feelings about his appropriateness for that job? Will he stay in that job despite his potential criminal record?
Well, yesterday we had a fairly decisive moment when President Karzai at this Shura got him to stand up and said to the people of that area, do you want this man as your district sub-governor? And he asked that question twice, and he got a strong endorsement from that group of elders for Haji Zahir as their governor. And of course they're aware of these issues as well, and as far as he was concerned, that was the decisive moment. But even before that, we had made clear, and I made clear on the record, that this was a decision for Governor Mangal. He makes that appointment, and that's not that we're washing our hands of this at all, it's that we trust his judgment and we're behind him. If he concluded that this guy was the right guy for that area, and now the Shura has said the same, and as far as we're concerned, that's the end of the issue.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Secretary Gates was saying on the plane today that Iran was interfering by supporting the Taliban. Do you have evidence? What kind of evidence do you have of Iranian support for the Taliban?
Yeah. I'll hold off on outlining the specific evidence, but there is clear indications that convince me that there is limited Iranian support for the insurgents, the Taliban, typically in weaponry and some training. It has not been to the level that I would view as being able to be a decisive factor in the effort, but we do have indications of that.
Did you find some of that evidence while you were in Marja?
I don't, in that particular operation, I don't remember anything uncovered that would draw that direct connection.
As you look at Kandahar, you don't have Governor Mangal figure necessarily. There's this constant concern about this corruption, perception of corruption in Kandahar linked to the president himself. That must create a pretty difficult challenge if you want to move in Kandahar. There's something not happening politically even before you move Connecticut.
I think you're absolutely right. The politics of Kandahar are complex, and there are many big players there, some within the system, some outside it, some not even in the Kandahar province itself, but who are major landowners and political players there. And there's no question it's a complex situation, and some of the players are positive, and some of them are malign. And of course, those two again are not binary. There's a spectrum between the two. The governor there, Governor Wisa, is a decent man. And what he really needs is the support of the central government to enable him to carry out some of those same actions that Governor Mangal has been trying in Helmand. And as I said about the Marja operation, one of the things that was really different about it was this link between the central government and the provincial government. And that's exactly the same kind of relationship we'll be hoping and helping the Afghans to develop as we look at the Kandahar phase, drawing in people from the communities, calling shuras, and so on. And so far we have every reason to believe that'll be the case. President Karzai has spoken about that himself, and the other ministers who've been involved in the Marja operation are very focused on that same set of issues and managing the politics in advance. And we're very clear, we can't manage the politics in advance, the Afghans have to manage the politics in advance, and it's exactly that we'll be discussing with them over the coming weeks.
Does it possibly jeopardize a possible operation there? In Marja, we're starting from scratch. You've got some difficult players there with that reputation.
General McChrystal may want to speak about the military part of the operation. Where we're quite clear is actually in all operations, even whether limited, like the Marja one, or much broader and more diffuse, as in Kandahar, you have to bring three things into line: politics, civil effect, and the military operation to bring security. They all have to be aligned to be confident not only that we're successful now, but that success is sustainable. So it's absolutely clear all three are conditions we need to we need to bring into line.
What I think we've learned about operations in Afghanistan, and I'm sure it's true other places as well, is if you try to push against the culture, you have huge problems. And so when I think of military operations here, I don't think of pushing them somewhere. I think of having them pulled somewhere. What I was so pleased about what we did in Marja was they pulled us in. We actually launched the final operation as a result of a signed resolution by the Shura asking us to do the operation and providing some guidance to us as they did. Therefore, it was not only President Karzai's operation, it belonged to the people of Marja. Now, they asked us for as little collateral damage and civilian casualties as possible. They asked us for good governance, and they asked us to promise to stay, that there'd be security. But they pulled us in. What we're trying to achieve with Kandahar is do the political groundwork so when it's time to do the military operation, the significant part of the population is pulling us in and supportive, and so we're not only doing what they want, but we're operating in a way that they're comfortable with. I think that's the key to success here. There will be some people against it, just like in Marja there were part of the Taliban against it, but it makes them the exceptions now as opposed to us trying to go against the grain, I'd say.
General, since you're essentially saying that the objective here is not to crush the enemy, but to force them to sue for reconciliation. In this light, how serious all this talk about reconciliation before Kandahar, given the spiritual, political significance of Kandahar for the Pashtun? And would you like to see Kandahar as the tipping point in terms of forcing as many groups under the umbrella of the Taliban to sue for reconciliation?
I'll take the first part. What I'd like to see from a military standpoint is Kandahar demonstrate again that we can operate in a way where we've got strong resolve by the government of Afghanistan, effective performance both by the Afghan military and coalition partners and their government partners, so that as we do an operation, it shows the people of Kandahar and the Taliban as well that operations like this actually result in a better outcome for everyone. I think what that does is it sets up an expectation on the part of the people that life will be better if we achieve the security. It also sets up an expectation on the Taliban that life will be better, but also that their military success is not possible anymore. I think we then shape conditions for political leadership to make decisions on things like reconciliation.
As a follow-up, you still have a problem with governance, and corruption. Both of you have been talking about this. There's all this talk about the corruption in the police, in particular. Kandahar is the largest. It's not marginal. Aren't you going to have a problem in terms of governance? You know, from delivering services to having a just, system of law and order?
Well, I think these 2 points are related. The point you asked about reconciliation and the point you've just made. It's clear in the end, if the people of these areas are going to give their allegiance to the legitimate government of Afghanistan and stay